So that leads us into tomorrow night. How does the vice president, in your estimation, how should she talk about the stakes of this election in terms of not just the threat to democracy, which we heard from President Biden a lot, and that's an argument that she's moved away from a little bit, but also this idea of freedom, which seems to be more the center of her campaign?
I don't know how she's going to do it. I mean, I don't mean to say it can't be done. I don't think she can. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think it's very tricky. And one of the things, obviously, we've seen from her in her thus far very successful general election campaign since she's become the de facto and then the nominee of the party is she has shifted away to some extent from Biden's framing of the Trump democracy. That has not been as central. The threat to democracy that Trump poses, she has shifted towards a more forward-looking rather than a backward-looking argument. When I say backward-looking, I don't mean to say it was the wrong argument on Biden's part, but she has, as you said, Jonathan, she has focused freedom rather than democracy. Those two things are obviously go hand in hand. I do think that, one of the things she wants to do is to both be commanding. This is something that people around her understand, that the way that you win debates is not with zingers and certainly not with policy. In the past, policy is fine. There'll be some discussion of that, but the way that debates, the winners of debates, the way we think about them, is the ones that command the stage in the moment. And we saw, George W. Bush lost the first debate to John Kerry when John Kerry challenged George W. Bush in a way that an incumbent wasn't used to and commanded the stage in that first debate. Obama lost his first debate with Romney in a lot of ways for the same reason. Won his first debate with McCain in that way. You remember those. You remember moments from that. You don't remember zingers from those debates. You just remember that in some respects, there's an impression of command. And part of her job out here is going to be to try to balance all these things of holding Trump accountable while also kind of rising above and sort of saying, this is the failed politics of the past. This is this man, we're done with him. We're over. To be kind of have a light touch about it, but a light touch that also has a certain kind of gravitas. That's a very tricky thing to do. And the last thing I will say is this, which is, it goes back to this moderator question. I can't tell you how many stories I've read in the last few days, and to Claire's point, about how this debate is all about Kamala Harris. There's a New York Times piece like this, a lot of stories where it's all about her because she is, and this is fair. This part of it is fair. She is not as known a quantity as Donald Trump. There are a lot of Americans in these polls who say they don't know enough about her. They want to know more about her. That is an enormous opportunity for her. It's an enormous opportunity for her to have a game-changing debate if she can allay some people's concerns, fill in blank spots, do all that kind of work. But from the moderator standpoint, you have to be able to ask questions that allow her to do that, challenge her in that area, because that is the central questions about her, while then focusing on the central questions, as we were talking about earlier on the show, about Donald Trump, which is all of these things that he has done, has been saying just up in these last couple of weeks, jailing political opponents, all the authoritarian things that he's been saying in these recent days. You have to be able to do two things at once. I think these journalists, a good moderator, can do that, but you can't make the debate about Harris or make the debate about Trump. You have to make the debate about what the central questions are facing both candidates. That, I think, is the big challenge for these two moderators tomorrow night.
Yeah, Joe, Mika, to Hallman's point, that New York Times Siena College poll that we talked about at the top of the show does suggest that 28% of likely voters simply want to know more about Harris. They need to know more about her as a person, but her policy issues. And that's fair. She is newer to the stage. People know what they need to know about Donald Trump. But Hallman's right. It can't just be about her. I know she's the fresh face. In many ways, that's an advantage for Democrats, that she is new. She's changed. But the moderators can't just focus on her as the shiny object. They've got to spend time drilling down on Trump's words, his recent words at that.
Yeah, the race is in effect tied. You talked about the New York Times Siena poll, which always tends to be an outlier in favor of Donald Trump. You also had CBS polls yesterday that showed the swing states just a dead heat. They're tied. So the race is tied. So what are you looking for in the debate with Kamala Harris?
I don't feel good about it at all. I'm sorry. She'll be face to face with a convicted felon, a man who has been found liable of massive fraud, a man who knows how to lie so much he ripped so many people off, millions and millions of dollars on top of that, being found liable for sexual abuse in a case that the judge called rape. This is not a good guy. This guy is convicted in a hush money case where he paid off a porn star. He can get anything done. He can say anything. He doesn't follow by any rules. How do you compete against that, especially if you have moderators who are not going to stop disinformation? So you've got this waterfall coming at you, fire hose of falsehoods, and he'll say anything. Anything at all. Nothing is off the table. So how do you compete against that? And in my opinion, he'll be bellowing at her. The mics will be off. You won't hear that. He'll be unchecked repeatedly when he lies. And I fear the questions will act like this is 1978 or something. And we want to talk about policy with each of these candidates. And I fear that he will be sane-washed. By the media.
1996. Mr. Mussolini.
96.
Tell us your trade embargo with Luxembourg. Tell us, Mr. Mussolini, what say you about that? The Italian radio announcer asked. It's a very good question. This race is tied, though. It is close. And I will say, I always love when the New York Times Siena polls come out because it causes a freak out among Democrats, which I think is good. Because I think people in the panel would agree with me. I think there's some overconfidence right now in the Democratic Party because how the last month has gone. I wouldn't be either. So that's why I'm saying I'm glad the New York Times Siena poll comes out about once a month, freaks out Democrats, makes them work harder because this race, if you talk to people on the inside of both campaigns, it's a tie. And by the way, people sitting there, their little newsletters or their little cable news shows or their little podcasts going, so-and-so, Donald Trump has a better inside track. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. This race is tied. This race is tied. It could go either way, and that's why the debate tomorrow night, Reverend Al, is so important. Now, you've run for president. You've been part of presidential debates. What are you looking for tomorrow, and how should the candidates prepare?
Well, I think that what they've got to do is clearly Donald Trump will be Donald Trump. I think what Kamala Harris has to do is she has to be able to bring out the policies that she wants to enact as president, defend or state what has already happened under the Biden-Harris administration, deal with inflation, deal with what is going to continue in terms of crime going down, deal with all of the freedoms that have been taken away from us by the Trump Supreme Court, women's right to choose, affirmative action, voting rights. But at the same time, she must show that her character is what you want as the president of the United States. I am running, if I'm Kamala Harris, I'm running against a man whose parole officer had to give him permission to come to Philadelphia to come to this debate. A man that has, over the weekend, talked about what women look like that qualify for him to grope. A man that is awaiting sentencing on 34 felony counts. Is this what you want your kids to grow up looking to a president to be? Where are the role models? So she has to have the ability to deal with policy and the kind of America everybody wants with freedoms of return and character. Do you think this guy who thinks that people that tried to have an insurrection are hostages that should be freed? This man who has all of the things I've outlined, do you think he can bring you the America that you want so badly to deal with these issues? And it's a hard task, but I think if she can do that, it will be a wipeout. Donald Trump will be bellowing. He'll be giving all kind of conspiracy theories because he's unhinged. He's looking at the thing that he never felt he'd have to be equal to, a black woman on stage. When he walks on stage and sees a woman and on top of that a black woman, people that he would discriminate against and dismiss, equal to him is going to, all the prep work in the world won't adjust his supremacist attitude and misogynist attitude to deal with that.